Thank you so much. So my name is Ryan, and I did just defend. I have so much joy and relief, it's hard to contain, actually. So I defended it in August and finished everything up in September. And so I'm going to share with you two projects that I've been working on for a while, and for about 4 years, actually, one of them. And so they're all about seasonal snow modeling and citizen science in data-limited mountain environments. And I'm going to first talk about the citizen science project and then talk about a project that was kind of born out of that. And this is creating a snow depth to snow water equivalence equation that describes the relationship based on climatological factors. So everyone here almost everyone that is presented has touched on snowpack in some way, because we all know that within our watersheds it's so important for water resources and water resource management, for all different parts of our ecosystems, for the forests, for irrigation, for municipal water utilities and things like that. And so I'm going to take us on a little bit of a deep dive into snow modeling for the next 25 minutes. The first thing I'm going to talk about is this project called Community Snow Observations. And Community Snow Observations is a NASA-funded project. We have 4 years of funding. And if you go to communitysnowobs.org after this, you can learn how to participate, and you can learn all about the project and all of the different aspects of it. I'm going to talk to you about one specific part. But first, I also want to thank all of my collaborators. I've worked with people at Oregon State University and at the Alaska Division of Geological and Geophysical Surveys, and also at the University of New Hampshire and at the University of Washington. So this project, for the Citizen Science Project, what we want to do is incorporate citizen scientist snow depth measurements into this process model. So we have this physically based model. We want to incorporate it into the model chain to better constrain our snow distribution and snow water equivalence results that we get from the model. And so specifically, our research questions have been, can citizen scientist measurements be used to accurately inform snow model outputs? And so snow model is that process-based model that is physically based and spatially explicit. And then I've been asking some other alternate questions, like how to model grid size and weather forcing product, and then also the number of citizen science measurements that we get. How does that affect our results? But first, what I want to do is be clear about what I'm talking about. So snow depth is what you think it is. It's just a depth in meters. And so I'll refer to it in meters. But I'm also going to be talking a lot about snow water equivalence. And snow water equivalence is simply just the water content of the snowpack. So if you had a meter cubed here of snow, and the top was the snow surface and the bottom was the ground surface, if you took that meter cubed and you just melted it, you would get the water equivalence of the snowpack. And so that's what I'm going to be referring to, and it's also going to be measured in a depth because the volume is implied. So it's just the volume of that meter cubed times that depth, and then we get the snow water equivalence. So I'm going to be bouncing back and forth a lot between snow depth and snow water equivalence. So what are we actually asking people to do? We have been trying to connect with backcountry skiers and snowmobilers and snowboarders and cross-country skiers, anyone that is accessing these hard to get to mountain environments in the winter that have snowpacks, and we've been asking them to take a couple minutes out of their day. So everyone that's in these environments, they're carrying around with them avalanche safety gear. So they might have an avalanche probe, they'll probably have an avalanche transceiver, and also a snow shovel. And what we realized is that they're carrying around with them a measuring device, right? Because this avalanche probe is usually 2.5 to 3 to 3.5 meters long, and it has centimeter marks on it. So we've asked them to take out their avalanche probes, and over a few square meters, take a couple of measurements of the snowpack. And then the other thing that we're usually all carrying along with us are our smartphones. And so we've teamed up with Mountain Hub, which is an app that's already in existence. We didn't have to create the app. And this app is made for people to record observations about the environment that they're in. And we ask them to add a snow field to it. So then you can take a measurement, pull out the app, record the measurement, and then when they get back into service, then we get access in real time to all those snow depth measurements through our web. So, and then our website goes in and pulls them all out of Mountain Hub. And so what we've seen is there's a lot of interest for this. There have been a lot of people all over the American West, in the Rockies and the Wasatch and the Sierra Nevadas and the Oregon Cascades and the Tetons, that have just been going out and in their free time just taking measurements for us and submitting. And this year in the winter of 2018, we had close to 4,000 measurements, and every year we've kind of been building since then. So what I'm going to talk to you about is our study area, because we have to kind of focus in on one location in order to do this research. So the first place that we have been focused on are the Chugach Mountains in Alaska. And the Chugach Mountains, you can see the map here, there's a lot of glacier surface there, so they get a lot of snow. Thompson Pass here actually has several of the records for the highest rates of snowfall in the United States ever recorded. We're talking about meters an hour, meters a day of snowfall that have sometimes fallen here near Thompson Pass. And I just want you to note that there is the Upper Sinus Snowtell Station. So NRCS runs Snowtell Station that has co-located snow water equivalents and snow depth. So we can then compare our results to something within the domain. And a quick overview here, I'm using Snow Model. It's that physically based, spatially explicit model. So what we do is we take this large domain and then we split it up into a grid, and we can choose our grid size. Our grid size for this project is 30 meter and also 100 meter because I want to test various sizes. And then we use some kind of weather forcing product. A lot of times people will use a weather station that's located within the domain. But we don't have a weather station that gives us all the right information. So we use these weather reanalysis products. And so it's like modeled weather historically going up to a couple of days ago. And so we use that to force the model. But what we have to do is, and this is the part of the project that we're trying to improve, is use some kind of submodel to input those people's observations into the model chain. And so what we use is SnowAssim, and this is an assimilation model, and it requires snow water equivalence measurements. So I'm just gonna skip that. We're gonna come back to that, because the second part of my talk is all about getting this snow water equivalence value from those snow depth values that people are giving us. But I'm going to skip that for now. We're just going to assume we can do this well, get that snow water equivalence. And so SnowAssim, what it does is we run the model. And so it goes through the whole, this is like one grid cell over time, snow water equivalence, and it's building. The blue line is without any kind of observations. And then it goes through the entire year and it stops. And we have these observations. So the red dot is someone's observation that they've submitted to us. And then it goes and it places that in space and time, and it looks at, well, what's the difference between the blue line and the red dot? And then it goes through another model run, and it changes the precipitation inputs. So that's trying to force the model to get this answer in this location and at this time. And so then what we're doing is essentially modifying the outputs by people's observations that they've handed us. But what we need to do is check our numbers in some way. So we can do that in time, or we can do that in space. So for this first, actually let me take a step back. All of these pictures are from fieldwork that I did in the Chugach Mountains in March, in April, and May 2018. This was like driving on an ice-covered road for 100 miles in the Chugach. It was it's not the most fun thing to do, but it's a really beautiful place. So any pictures that you see are from my fieldwork there. So looking over time, we can try to see how far off we are with this model. So on the x-axis, we have snow water equivalents. And that's the observations from the SNOTEL station of how much snow water equivalence is in that location. So then we can take that grid cell and we can look at, well, what have we modeled for that same place? And the coloration here on the right is just the day of water year starting in October. So you can see it starts here and it builds snow water equivalents and then it melts off. And what you can see from this is from the no assimilation run. We have not added any measurements yet, and we've calibrated the model. It's from 2017 water year, and this is a 30-meter resolution. And you can see that we're up in this quadrant up here. We're almost always, or always, overestimating the amount of snow water equivalents using this model, even though we've calibrated it. And if you were to average over the entire water year, the root mean squared error of all of those 365 days, we're off by about 25 centimeters or 0.25 meters averaged over the entire year. And so we're not off by that much. We're talking about a place that receives meters and meters. We've seen some places with 5 to 10 meters of snow on the ground, and we kind of max out our avalanche probes and we can't really take any more measurements. So this place has a lot of snow, but we're wrong, right? So what we want to do is improve that in some way. And so I subset people's measurements in time, I subset them in space, and I was trying to get a group of measurements that really helped out. And so this is late season measurements. This is like measurements that were submitted to us from participants from about peak SWE, which was April 15th or after, going into May. And those were the only things that we added into this entire model chain. And what you can see here is something that we want, right? The snow is building up and melting away kind of along this one-to-one line. If we could do it perfectly, it would be right along that line. But we can't do it perfectly. But we're improving our results. And this is the best of about 1,200 different model runs. So we had to like test a lot of different things. And this is the set that seemed to perform the best. And again, if we average how far off we are over the entire year, we're off by about 4 centimeters. So we're really making an improvement upon the model without any extra measurements added. But we want to also try to see how we're doing in space, not just in one location in time. So we take this remotely sensed data set. We fly and take pictures, and we also use laser scanners for LiDAR. So we take this swath of information of how deep the snow is, and we can compare what we get from the remote sense products for the snow depth to what we've modeled in the same location for that day. And so this is from that best late season model run from the remotely sensed product. We have 3 data sets here and 3 histograms. We have a pink one. The pink histogram is all of the different grid cells in that space, and you can see that their values are a lot higher than the gray values, and the gray is from the remotely sensed product, and you can see it behind everything here. And then the blue is from the histogram of that space from the snow depths that we have modeled after we've put in the citizen science observations. And these numbers are the median. So we're improving our median numbers from 3.1 down to 1.5 meters, where the average of the LiDAR product or the remotely sensed product is the median is 1.1. So again, we're moving it in the right direction, but we're not doing it perfectly. And I mean, there's this in modeling, any kind of modeling, there's the old saying that all models are wrong, but some are useful. And so what we're trying to do is create something, a workflow, and a process that's useful and helpful. So now I'm going to switch gears and talk about the snow depth to snow water equivalence work that we've been doing. So this was recently published in the journal The Cryosphere over the summer. And we've been working on this because people were submitting to us, they were submitting snow depth measurements. And what we needed to input into the model was snow water equivalence. So there's this relationship between snow depth and snow water equivalence that lots of other researchers have tried to get at, but we wanted to do it in a new way, incorporating climatological variables into that relationship to describe it. So for this project, for the depth to SWE project, what we want to do is develop a depth to SWE equation that incorporates climatological information into the relationship. And as you all know, if you were to take 1 meter cubed of Oregon snowpack and compare it to a meter cubed of Utah snowpack, those things would look quite different. Like in the Oregon Cascades, our snow is really wet. There's a lot of rain on snow events that happen. It's also usually closer to 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees. It's closer to freezing because of the mitigation of the ocean temperatures, and we're getting a lot warmer winters in Oregon. And so these things affect the amount of snow. Even if you have the same snow depths in Utah and Oregon, the snow water equivalence is probably going to look a lot different. And so we need to be able to describe through climatological factors that difference. And that's what we're trying to do. And so one of the ways to do that, to move between snow depth and snow water equivalence, is to simply try to estimate the bulk density. Because density is how we move from depth to snow water equivalence. So we could do that in some kind of easy way. So the bulk density rho over here could be a function, just a linear function of depth. And we could establish a couple of coefficients here. Or bulk density could be a linear function before the snow depth is some critical depth. And after it's that critical depth, we could establish just a different set of coefficients. Or we could make bulk density a function of time. Or we can keep adding complexity to describe this relationship. And bulk density could be a function of depth, time, location, elevation, weather, and climatological factors. And these are a little bit more complex approaches. And this is what we've ended up with, this type of relationship. And so again, what we're using for this is to validate it and also train our model is the snow data set from NRCS, from all of the SNOWTEL stations in the American West and Alaska. And then we also went to the British Columbia Snow Survey and got all of their data. And all of these have co-located snow water equivalents and snow depth values, so we can build a relationship that brings in some of this different information. So what we're looking for through this is explanatory variables. So we started with a big list of variables, and we thought that these things might be important, like winter precip, or mean annual precipitation, or winter temperature, and we wanted to test them out. We actually chose a lot more than this, but this is what ended up in our publication. And so one of the things that we think is probably important is winter precipitation. So we have these 30-year averages for winter from December, January, and February. And this is at a 1 kilometer resolution. And this is from the Climate North America product from Wang et al. 2016. And so we went and we pulled this in, and we tried to see if this was an important factor. We also looked at temperature difference. So again, we have these 30-year averages of temperature difference from the average warmest month to the average coldest month. And we have this at a 1 kilometer resolution, also from that Climate North America project. And then we ran this through a stepwise linear regression. And what we found is we first tried a 1 equation model, and then we tried a 2 equation model, and then we tried a multivariable 2 equation model. And that's the one that gave us the best results for, this is actually 2 million data points here. And we found that if we averaged over those 2 million data points, we have our root mean squared error, the average that we are off, is only 67 millimeters or 6.7 centimeters. And really all we're doing is taking depth and some of those other climatological factors, and we're able to predict the snow water equivalence. So this is this is kind of ridiculous, but I'm going to take you through it. This is our two equation model. So we have if the SWE is happening during the accumulation phase, or if the snow water equivalence is happening during the ablation phase, we found that the day of year really matters, right? So that's one of the explanatory variables. The other is just depth, that H there. And then we found that winter precipitation is important, and the temperature difference that I just described, and day of water year. So with those pieces of information, you can just feed in a list of your snow depths and get out to a pretty high degree of accuracy the snow water equivalence values for that location and time and place. And so what we have to do is then compare it to a couple of other models. So we compared it to some of the more commonly used bulk density models. And so they've described this relationship in a slightly different way. And we wanted to compare our results to their results. And so one of the things that we found after doing that, this is that model, Sturm et al. 2010. Sturm divides it into different climatological snow areas like alpine, maritime, prairie. And we're still getting better root mean squared error, and our bias is actually also better. So the whole data set is kind of skewed towards either being above or below the averages, and their bias is a little bit lower. So we thought this was really interesting, and we wanted to publish it. But we also had to do some validation again, because we trained it all on western snow in the western United States and in Alaska. And what we wanted to do was go somewhere else. So we went to the Northeast and got a lot of the state snow survey data and from the research forests, and we had over 100,000 data points here with co-located snow water equivalence and snow depth. And when we ran our numbers and we ran our model there, again, we're getting pretty good. We're actually getting better than the average in the West. So we think that this really is getting at some true relationship between snow water equivalence and snow depth. So we got better numbers there. The RMSE is a bit lower on the East Coast. And we made this available to everyone. So if you just go to our GitHub site, you can go and download. Unfortunately, it's a MATLAB script, and I know that a lot of people might not have access to MATLAB files, but we might turn this into a Python script too. And you can just download it and run this yourself. Anybody can do this right now. It's up and available. And so I'm going to get back to why are we trying to do this? One of the reasons is because we want to do better snow water equivalence mapping and estimation. And this is from the Thompson Pass domain from the no assimilation case in 2017. You can see that our snow water equivalence depth over here, there are a lot of the higher elevation mountains that the model thinks there's a lot of snow there. But once we've added in those citizen science measurements and we've improved the process a bit, we're getting a lot more of an accurate view over a really large domain of how much snow water equivalence is actually there. And when we compare these two numbers, so I could take this and just add up all of the snow water equivalents in this whole area and add up all of the snow water equivalents in this area. This one has almost double the amount without the citizen science observations. So we're really modifying what we can predict is in this space using a couple of measurements from people that are volunteers. And we think that's really interesting and important. And then what we want to do is take this to new domains. So we've already started working on a few new domains. And this is some of the places that we've already started modeling in the Tetons, in the Oregon Cascades, and in the Lake Tahoe Basin. But this could be applied to any watershed of interest. And if you have one that you are particularly interested in, come talk to me. Maybe we could add it. So this is where we're going with the project, and we think it's really important for our ability to understand how much snow is in these mountain environments, and we think it's really great to incorporate people's measurements and people's involvement in the general public. So that's all I have for you today, and I can take questions at this time. Yes.
How do you reconcile past measurements of the relativity of the snow water equivalent that a local place has or a watershed has to this new accuracy?
Yeah, because we're incorporating climatological factors. Is that what yeah. Right, so I think if I were to rephrase the question, it would be, since we are incorporating these 30-year averages of climate into estimation of point SWE measurements, how can we do that when the climate may be changing quickly? No.
Well, that's a good question too, but how do you compare the data that you're getting to past data so that they can see what the trends are over time?
We haven't worked on comparing this to past data at all. We've really just been working with our own data sets, and I mean the SNOTEL station data is historical data, right? So that is incorporated into the development of that relationship. Does that answer your question? Okay, great.
Years ago, I worked with sonic snow sensors, and there were some real problems with snow absorbing some of the energy that the sonic sensors used. Are you pretty confident that the LiDAR energy is being reflected perfectly when you're getting accurate measurements from the snow with LiDAR?
That's a great question. So part of we have one half of our data set is LiDAR based, and one is just simple photogrammetry based. And we're kind of, what I put up here, you saw me explaining it as kind of like the observational data set is the remote sensing data set, but that is going to come with its own errors. And we are not, again, trying to, we are not trying to improve that LiDAR product. We just want to take in the amount of error and explain that through our analysis. So we're not trying to really improve that at all. And I have not spent any time really trying to answer that specific question of whether or not the snowpack is actually taking in that energy from the LiDAR product. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thanks.